In this video training, we look at the go-to market framework or your marketing communication strategy for your optometric practice. It's a very short course. It's just a simple illustration or key points that you need to be aware of in terms of where do you get started, why you need to get started, how do you get about getting going within your marketing plan or marketing strategy. And so a lot of times when you're thinking of a marketing communication strategy, it tends to sometimes be a foreign term within optometric practices. We are in 2020 and there are still a lot of practices that still depend on outdated traditional selling techniques and promotional activities. Whereas if you think about it, however, we are living in times today whereby we have a direct access or ease of access to the consumer through social media or digital media platforms that are readily available. Customization and bespoke services have become increasingly normal, and expectations that consumers have pertaining to optometric practices that they go to are very, very high, and they are expecting certain things from the optometric practice. There are progressive technological advancements that are available right at your disposal as a business owner. Disruptive technology has become increasingly popular, to say the least. Convenience optometry is now the only form of acceptable service excellence that consumers have. And so, are you exceeding expectations pertaining to that convenience that they want and demand from the optometric practice? With that being said, our approach as optometric practices has no choice but to adapt to all these different types of changes that are taking place. Speaking of a marketing communication strategy, Dr. Daryl Glover and myself came together. Dr. Daryl Glover from the United States of America. He's got years of experience within the eye care industry. We're doing incredible work around digital media marketing. He's literally a global optometrist, entrepreneur, and he's got extensive experience transforming optometric practices or businesses, getting them to the next level through marketing. Here in South Africa or Africa, I've also been doing similar work within the digital media space and working with various optometric practices, looking at what makes the ideal optometric practice and what do optometric practices need to do in order to operate at the highest possible level. And so we collaborated together and wrote this fantastic book called Vision Straight's Marketing Guide for the eye care industry. The book has got 11 chapters. There's a chapter on the future is online. There's a chapter on the consumer, where we profile the consumer. There's a chapter on marketing communication strategies, where in this video training, it's a snippet of various key components in terms of where you get started. Whereas in the book, we give specific examples based on different scenarios that exist within the optometric practice. And we even give you a 12-month planner that you can implement within your business. So we highly advise that you get the book. We've got a chapter specifically on social media, a chapter on websites, a chapter on brand building, a chapter on budgets, influencer marketing, a chapter on where do you get started implementing all of this. Then we featured a wide range of influencers from different parts of the world with their expertise who have built incredible businesses or eye care practices, but still used digital media and social media to grow their individual and business brands. Then we've got a chapter on ethical marketing, which is very, very important that in the midst of all the marketing activities that you do, you're still ethically doing it the right way. And so this is a fantastic book. Do get the book. It's really fantastic, very practical because it's written by optometrists for optometrists with optometry or eye care at the heart of what we were doing. And so it's not a generalized book that anyone can just use. We literally used key concepts that make optometric practices incredible practices, or the eye care industry to be an incredible industry from a marketing point of view. And so going back to this video training, it's very, very important that we highlight key components that you need to be aware of. And so you need to have a clear marketing strategy which will enable you to communicate more effectively with regards the various consumers that come to your practices. Remember, we communicate in order to connect. So a lot of practices, they make noise on various digital media or social media or through their marketing strategies that they have in place that results in the consumer not being able to connect with that because they're not communicating, or you're not communicating with them in a manner in which they can respond to the most. And so every practice needs to develop and follow the best possible marketing framework that creates the most impactful client experience. The ultimate objective of any strategy you decide to employ in your business is that it needs to be consumer-centric. Very, very important that the consumer is at the center of that which you are trying to do. How do you become consumer-centric? Well, if you are constantly communicating how great you are as a business or as a brand, you're losing the consumer. But if you can communicating how great the consumer can be through what you're providing them with, that's how you become consumer-centric. Communicate the solutions that you are having in relation to the problems that the consumer is facing. That's what you need to understand when it comes to being consumer-centric through your marketing activity. Number two, your marketing strategy needs to be aligned with your business vision. There has to be alignment. What a person is going to experience in the practice, what they engage with on digital media, social media, or through your marketing initiatives, and what they also encounter when they meet your practice team or your staff has to be in alignment. You cannot have one operating at that level and the other section operating at that level. It doesn't work like that. Very important, it has to be representative of the company values and beliefs. Very, very important that because people connect with that. They want a sense of belonging, a sense of identity, a sense of purpose. And so if they can see that those things are clear within your practice and the values are clear, the beliefs are clear, the value add that they're going to receive is clear, they are able to connect with that. And that's what your strategy needs to be all about. And we, for example, as a company, when we were approaching our business, we made sure that every single piece of content that we put out in public has our values in display. So, for example, right behind you, we wrote it very clear. Vision Straight exists to ensure the following takes place within the companies it provides services for. And that was excellence and efficiency, accountability and leadership, great service delivery, increased productivity and profit margins, discipleship management, and of course, organizational development and transformation. When people come to your practice, is there anywhere in the practice where they can see what you are all about? What are you all about? Some of the practices that we have seen, unfortunately, we have seen that it's just a bland, boring environment that does not speak at all to the consumer. So you have to understand that your values need to be on display. I'm not saying that you need to write them down like this, but whether you are having them on your digital platforms, whatever platforms that you are having them on, they have to be clear and well articulated that this is what the person is going to encounter when they engage with your brand or when they engage with your services. It has to be authentic and unique to your specific target audience. So think about your target audiences. Think about the baby boomer, the Generation X, the millennial, the Gen Z. Think about those different individuals. Think about if you're in a community with Xhosa speaking people or community with Afrikaans speaking people. Know your community that you are operating in or that you are serving, so that you are providing services in relation to the community that you are operating in. And it needs to be strategically positioned to drive sales revenue up. Your strategy needs to be measurable and practical in its application. Very important, it needs to be disruptive and collaborative with various other influences it may have, user-friendly for both the practice and the consumer, and lastly, lifestyle-orientated, as it needs to move beyond eye health and management. So that's your strategy. Your strategy has got all these different components to it, and a lot of times, optometric practices fail to understand what components their strategy has and what is the benefit or the value of each strategy pertaining to what they want to achieve. And so this is basically something that you have to be aware of. And so a brief overview, what we mean is that Your strategy, it's all about the client experience. And there are 5 key components that can directly and positively be required by your practice to employ within it immediately. And these components are: number 1, a marketing strategy, right? So remember, your go-to framework, it's about the client experience. That client experience has different components to it, so that you need to be aware of. So your marketing strategy is a digital marketing. Does it have components such as lead generation and measurement? What is your internal versus your external communication? This has to do with your messaging and your positioning, your targeted audience, right? Component number 2 is your product and service marketing. How you communicate your products and service offering is very, very important. A lot of practices just make noise. If you go to their social media pages or platforms, all you see is different promotions, but there isn't a journey that a consumer can see, that this is the journey that a consumer goes through from start to finish. So when you're communicating through marketing, you have to have that in play in terms of the journey. The sales journey of a consumer involves things like you educating them, you examining them, you informing them, you're asking questions, you persuading them, you're convincing them, you're delivering on that which you are saying you do, you're sharing testimonies, you're sharing examples, you're demonstrating your expertise, you're showcasing your capacity. But all of that happens while you keep in mind that it's all for the consumer, not about your practice. And so how you communicate your products and your services to the consumer is very, very important. So you need to segment your focus based on target audiences. How you communicate with your 40-year-old will be high incoming earner will be different from how you communicate with your 50-year-old low incoming earner. So each of them requires different focus points that you need to be aware of. So how you position your brand or your products or your services in consumers' minds is very, very important. For us as a business, we focused on books. Writing books was something that we saw as something that can distinguish us. So whatever service that we're rendering to someone, we also then put a book in their hand so that they take the book and they can continue on their own. So we help them help themselves. That's our approach to our business. So in your case, how you communicating your spectacles, your lenses, your frames, your technology, everything, it's a matter of how are you helping them not have the problem that they are having. So that's how you go about positioning your products and your services throughout your marketing activities. And next, your sales enablement. You need a toolkit that you need to follow. Training, campaigns. What is it that you need to be doing? In 2020, we have been realizing that a lot of people are online and content is king, but we don't want to make noise. And we have been focusing on running campaigns that have got nothing to do with us as a company, but celebrating the people within the industry, and that has helped grow our brand. So whenever you think of running a campaign, whenever you're thinking of training, you're not training your team for the business. You're training them for their personal and professional development. When they are trained, they will then take your business to the next level. When you're doing a campaign, the campaign needs to be centered around the consumer, but in a manner in which the practice will benefit. Next, client intimacy. Here, it's all about customer retention and building loyalty with your clients, right? You have to think of surveys and analytics that you need to be doing that give you information pertaining to your brand that will help your brand get to the next level. And so how are you building loyalty? So client intimacy, how people experience your brand, is very, very important that you have an awareness of when it comes to the client experience overall. And lastly, component number 5, it's all about elevating brand equity. So how are you viewed, or how are you perceived online? What awareness is there around your brand? What is the perceived value? Do you have any brand activations that you do on a quarterly or monthly basis that elevate your brand in consumers' minds? And so each of these components have their own approach that you need to focus on. The question then that you might have is, where do you start with your framework? you can break it down into 4 different categories. Block 1, so take out a pen and paper for this. Do 4 blocks, and your heading number 1, content development. Heading number 2, marketing activities. Heading number 3, social media management. And heading number 4, visual representations. Let's go back to heading number 1, content development. Remember, content is what separates your business from all the other businesses. You can have 10 websites, but when you get to the individual websites, there has to be something that connects your website to the consumer, right? So when a person searches optometrist within my area, they're going to get to your website, if you do have a website. So content development has to do with website creation, or content development has to do with website creation. Do you have a buyer-centric website or a boring website? Blogs and newsletters, social media, training and development within the practice. So that's content that you need to work on. Then your marketing activities, brand activation, digital and social selling, sales enablement strategies, and communication strategies and tactics. So that's what you do under marketing. Under social media management, you can break it down under Facebook, Instagram, or LinkedIn, Twitter, brand positioning, analytics and reporting. Then visual representation, it's all about your YouTube channel, photography, social media, your website. So do you have a visual representation of your brand? So immediately you can get started on, okay guys, what content do we have regarding our framework? Next, what marketing activities do we start with? Do we need a brand activation? Do we do digital and social selling strategies first? Do we have sales enablement strategies? And are we currently communicating effectively with our consumers in a manner that we can connect? Then when you look at your social media, you say, okay, guys, what activity are we doing on Facebook? Is it effective? What is the analytics telling us? Instagram, same thing. And so how are you going to be brand positioning your brand? Basically, it's all about the social media. Whereas your visual representation, do you connect with your brand? That's the question. Do you connect with your brand? If not, why would you expect consumers to connect with your brand? So even within your team, you've got different age groups within your team, different people with different backgrounds. Do they all connect with your brand? So that's something that you need to be aware of when it comes to a go-to-market framework, that you cannot just go on about your business without having a clear framework in place that effectively helps you strategize what you need to be doing, when you need to be doing it, how you need to be doing it, and most importantly, why you need to be doing it. And that's basically it with regards to a go-to framework market.